Okay, good. So let's take a few more just kind of check-ins. I want to kind of see what's going on in the room a little bit, and then we'll go on. How about our Lakota friend back here? Can you give me a check-in? How are you doing with the talk this morning? Where's your head at?
Well, good, thank you. Thank you. I was enjoying the explanation, I guess.
Oh, good.
Sort of comparing what I've heard other places with what you were saying and what plugged in.
How's this compare to the Lakota teachings, out of curiosity?
Oh, much more detailed.
Much
Yeah,
more.
My Lakota friends would not have even remotely this level of detail. And part of why I found it was because I thought too much.
Did you talk to him?
No, thought, think. Well, I might talk too much too, but, and my challenge is the surrendering part. My, pick a word, put a label on it, but my experience or thought or belief or whatever is that it's not surrendering and light, hope, and goodness is not quite the same.
Good.
Could be.
Uh-huh.
To some degree, it's for me, a statement of faith. I hope it's that way. So I'm somewhere on the continuum of surrendering, and
Yeah.
more is better, I think.
Well, I mean, in relationship to God, ultimately, it is surrender. That's the bottom line of it. And there's in our teaching, we have 4 levels of surrender, 4 primary, sort of surrender levels. And if you've ever seen the Muslims when they pray, they do what's called a salat. And we pray salat also. And the salat has 4 positions. There's an upright position, a bent over position, a kneeling position, and then a prostrating position. And those all represent states of submission to God, or surrendering to God. So in the West society, even like in most religions, Christianity, or many of them, if you really look deeply, most religions have not mastered the upright level yet. The upright level says, essentially, I understand there is a God, and I accept there is a God, and I'm willing to turn to face that God and commit to God. That's the first level of a surrender, and most people don't do that. And that's one of the problems in the West is we don't have that surrender. In fact, the West's teaching come out of the '60s, which is more, do what you want, or what did
Just do it.
they're just I'm just doing it. Who was the guy, Ram Dass? What was his famous book?
Be here now.
Be Here Now and Do What You Want, or something like that. But yeah, it was. You just kind of do what you want. You follow your being, but that's got a lot of people in trouble. You follow your being, and next thing you know, you're doing all sorts of things, and a lot of that stuff can take you down bad paths. So this level of surrender, and I feel you've had this, but then you're questioning it. Like there's some kind of question that's come into your mind that you have to resolve around your relationship to, how can you surrender to what you're not sure about? You've got to get clear what you're surrendering to. Now, when you get to this level here, this level means essentially, I accept God's will. So I understand there is a God, and I'm going to bow to what God asks of us. This, by the way, is what I would call religion today in all the world. That most religions say, here's the book of religion, Bible, Torah, Quran, Vedas, whatever it is, surrender to it and you're here, right? And that's better than this, because this one you're not even sure there's a God. This one you're surrendering it to it, but this one there's no real discernment and there's no love. You're doing it because you're supposed to. And the problem with that is that who tells you what you're supposed to do, right? So if you go to the Lutheran church, they tell you to do it this way. You go to the Protestant church, they tell you to do it this way. You go to the Baptist church, they tell you to do it this way. You go to the Adventist church, they tell you to do it this way. You go to Wahhabi Islam, they tell you to do it this way. You go to Shia Islam, they tell you to do it this way. You do Sunni Islam, they tell you to do it this way. Who's right? Who is the right one? Who's got the answers? And so people kind of go where they're drawn, and half the time they don't know what they're being drawn to. Even the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, said that at the time of this oil being discovered, he said there would be, I think, 73 sects of Islam, and only 72 would be right. 72 would be wrong, and 1 would be right. And he said there would be, if I remember, I don't know if my number's right, I think he said there'd be 72 sects of Christianity, and only 1 would be right. And there would be like 70 sects of Judaism, and only 1 would be right. So that's an interesting time when you have all these different sects and they're all potentially following wrong things. That's the problem with this bowing at this level. So there's another level which is when you kneel. We call this the station of Christ, where when you're down on your knees, you're in loving devotion to God. And this is higher than just following the dogma. Here's somebody who doesn't even know here you're not sure if God exists. Here you believe in God, but you follow the dogma. Here you're so much in devotion and love that love becomes your guide. So now love, when you're following something, you answer the question is, does this bring me more in love with God? Does this bring me more in love with truth? Does this bring me more in love with goodness or not? And if it doesn't, you throw it out. Because you recognize, so now you have kind of a way to determine whether this is right or not. Because this one you're not sure about, but when you get down here, well, is it really right when I follow something and my heart feels so bad about it? Could that really be right? When I follow that, like the love shuts down inside of me and the love goes away. How could following God not be of the love? But this is the station of love. The kneeling is the station of love. But there's one station further, which is when you see when the people go all the way down in full prostration. Abdullah, come up here, show the group these. Come stand up for mine. I'm going to show you the 4 levels. Show them the first level, just standing. So here's the first level. This is the level of the sincere seeker. He's sincerely trying to find God and know that God is there, believe in God and trust in God, and not turn to the darkness. So this is the station of La ilaha illallah. Okay, then show us the second. Now in the prayer you're going down to this station. See now, what does this show? You're bowing. See the bowing? What's the bowing? It means that you're willing to bow to the teachings. The teachings of what? The teachings of God. What are the teachings? Well, again, this is a question mark. But you're bowing. You're really turning towards the teachings and you're bowing. Now you go to the third station.
I can go down the way like this.
That is?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, that's okay. That's right. So in the third station, you're on your knees and you're in devotion. Now you're really devoting to God. This is what Jesus came to teach. Jesus actually came to teach this station. This is what Jesus came. He said the Jewish people have lost the love. They went up in their head. This is why Jesus came. He said, what the Jewish people have become too intellectual. Their teachings of God have ended up in their mind. He came to teach the love. He came to remind people that God is love and to come back to love. This is what the teachings of Christ were all about, to return the Jewish people back to love. course, we know what happened, and he wasn't accepted, and then another religion formed around him. But in essence, that is still what his teaching role was. And now we have the final position. This is the position of submission. Now, submission really means that you absolutely bow yourself down to God. You're putting we say you're putting your head, your heart, your body under the foot of God. So now this is when I talk about the station of divine surrender or slavery or submission. This is the station. It's when there's nothing even left of you. When you're in this station, you're gone. If you've really been in prayer, when you get your head on the ground, your being disappears. It's like the only thing that happens down here is the presence of God. If you're really in, you're not up in your head, spinning in your mind. If you hit this in the right way, your inner reality explodes in light, and you find yourself sitting in an ocean of pure divinity. And that's the station of prostration. You're now in the station of pure divinity. In our way, we call that the unity, or hakika. And it's like enlightenment, but it's different. And this is not a person who is enlightened, or in the unity, but it's a person who is entering the first ray. I'm saying the people who to have unity is this 100 times. But this is the beginning of it. This is the first step where you've entered into it. And I love the Indians. I love what the Indians teach, and I've been very close to many tribes. I've been friends with the Apache shamans and Lakotas and Navajo and many different tribes over the years. But being in one with nature and one with the spirits and one with bear and one with elk or one with eagle is not the same as being one with God. It's a different consciousness, and I love the consciousness of that spiritual presence. It's fabulous, and it sure beats being up in our head, which most of the quote white people are. But as far as actually being in divine presence, it's not there, not yet. They know it. They know Great Spirit's there, but they're not, very, very few are living in that state of consciousness. Some have reached it, of course. Some of the great ones have. So, our work is to get there. Your work is to get there, and not stop with, don't stop with the teachings, because maybe something inside of you is calling out more. It's like you're saying, wait a minute, this is my time, and it's not, Sweat Lodge is amazing, and Sun Lodge is amazing, and all these things. And what are you doing it for? What's the purpose? Because the purpose is to bring people close to God. That's the real purpose, to get them into a holy state of consciousness and to be able to maintain it, not leave it. Anyways, that's some thoughts. Yes? Yes? Somebody got their hand up back there. Yes?
And I'm not really sure if I can articulate what I'm feeling in my heart.
Yes.
You're talking about living in God, or living with God. And you shared a couple of your stories of the angelic healing presence.
Yes.
And I guess what I'm trying to understand is, with all the suffering that there is in the world today, are we saying that, like the Syrian refugees,
Yes.
are people that are not living in God, and that's why they get these chemical weapons directed at them, and all of the refugees that are coming here to the United States, and now Texas just passed this law that basically legalizes racial profiling, so there's a lot of suffering in my community. So how do you explain that, and also how do we help heal that suffering?
Well, so there's two types of suffering. There's the suffering that comes from not following God, and there's the suffering that comes from the trials of God. They're different, but they actually feel similar. Okay, so a person who doesn't follow God is going to get themselves in trouble, usually. In other words, God might say, protect your sexuality, right? Now in the West, we're very promiscuous. So what happens to a woman, let's say, who gets promiscuous, is she may get pregnant, she gets pregnant, she may have a child, or she may have an abortion, and she ends up having to go through that whole cycle, and there's a lot of wounding that goes on for her either way. If she has an unwanted child, it's very damaging to the child. If she has a child she doesn't want, she may have to totally stop her life to take care of the child, which she may not want to be doing, right? She might end up with a man that she really doesn't want to be with, for the rest of her life. There's a lot of issues that come up from, in a way, doing what maybe wasn't what she should have done in that moment, and there's outcomes of it. So there's that type of thing. But the other side of it is that God will often give trials as a way of teaching people in cultures. And for example, back in the day, like in the time of Carlos Castaneda. Remember Carlos Castaneda and Don Juan teachings, right?
Yeah.
If you remember that Don Juan Castaneda's was actually, what were they? Yaqui, right? Yaqui Indians. And they were being subjugated by, for many, many years, the Yaqui were subjugated by the Spanish. The Spanish pretty much oppressed them, and they became essentially prisoners. And the people who, many of them died, but some of them faced their oppression and became great spiritual beings, and because they actually used the oppression to go beyond the oppression, to discover ways of going beyond it. They found their power, they found their strength, they found their abilities, their light. So these people became very great beings. So oppression can also lead to greatness in different ways. And so God will often oppress a culture when the time comes. Okay, so for example, in Jerusalem right now, or in Palestine, you have the Arab people are being essentially oppressed by the Israelis right now, right? In other words, they have no school, they have very little hope, there's very little money, they can't travel, they can't leave the country. They go through, like if you try to go from one country, you can't go from one country to the next. And many of them, their families are broken, half are in Jordan, half are in Palestine, they're not allowed to cross over. There's a lot of oppression. But if you look deeply, and I was over there, I was there 20 years ago, and I was over there just last summer, around this time. That in 20 years, the oppression of the Palestinian people has done something remarkable. It brought them together. There's more love and more compassion and more kindness. 20 years ago when I was there, it was clearly a place where there was fighting and violence and all sorts of stuff going on, and it was a little bit scary. This time when I was there, there was so much love, and so that the oppression brought the people together. Many of the people came together in such a state of unity and understanding. Like through the oppression, they found values like mercy, compassion, goodness, kindness, group unity, working together as a group, things like that. That wasn't there 20 years ago. So you see, God's trials are difficult, but they're for a reason. They're for a reason. And every culture, the Arab people, after they're oppressed, will have the chance to become the oppressor. See, that's how God works. God says, okay, I oppressed you. Now, God's going to put you on the other side of the shoe. Now he's going to say, now I'm going to put you on top, and let's see what you do. Are you going to go start oppressing others, or are you going to remember what I taught you, and you're going to treat others with respect and goodness? You see the difference? This is how God works. God tests you, and then cleans you and purifies you, and then when you have it, then he tests you again by putting you on the other side and says, okay, now let's see what you do with it. That's how God works. So in the West right now, the Syrians are being tested. This is a very, 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 very profound test for those people. In some ways, the Syrian culture is one of the heights of the Arab world. It's some of the purest of the Arab people are in that area. So they are being very, very deeply tested to see what they can do with it. And unfortunately, the testing is not always easy. But so is the rest of the world. We're being tested too. Meaning like, what do we do with it? Right now, I'm not sure we're doing so well. I mean, what would be the correct way to deal with the refugees and things like that? Compassion, mercy, love, help, caring. How would you like, if we got taken over, let's say that Mexico came out and finally got the Alamo back. And they came in and took over Austin. And all of you...
never left.
That's true. Let's say they took over the government. All right, that's true. That may be true. But we'll play it out. And now all you have to leave. So you're all being refugeed out. You've all had your homes taken. You've all been bombed. You've all have to leave. You're all going to be forced out to Waco. Or some other local area. Houston. California. Come to California. All right, so how would you like to be treated? Yeah, would you like the doors to be open for people to find a place for you, to help you, to give you food, to give you, you know what I'm saying? Wouldn't that be nice? Like, rather than if people shut you out, you're not welcome here, don't come here. We're not giving you anything, get out, you're gonna just destroy our culture, go back to Texas and deal with it. How would you feel about that? Isn't that what we're doing?
Yeah.
So, you got to think about these things from your own perspective. How would you want to be treated? And then are you treating others that way? That's what God looks at. God wants you to treat every person as a jewel. That's the real teaching. Is like, what does it really mean to treat every person as a jewel? Because every person is a jewel. Every person is a creation of God. Every person is beautiful in their own way. So how do you create everybody as a jewel? How do you treat people as jewels? That doesn't mean that you have to let evil in your house. Don't misunderstand that. But it means that you treat things as a jewel. I mean, people turn evil, you have to also be aware of that. But if they haven't, then how do you treat them with love and respect? So you welcome them, you care about them, you give them everything, you help them. And by the way, these are the foundations of the Sufi teachings. These are the foundations of the teachings that came through all the prophetic traditions. Abraham used to stand outside when he was out in the areas where he lived, which was all that whole area from Jerusalem all the way over to Medina. That was his area. He would stand outside every night and he'd call out, "Is there anybody in this valley who's hungry? Is there anybody in this valley that needs food? Is there anybody in this valley who hasn't eaten?" And every single night he would go out, and if anybody was hungry, anybody was suffering, he would give them food, he would give them blankets, he would give them help. And that's the hallmark of prophetic care for people. So we're not Abraham, and yet we still could extend ourselves a little bit, right? We could extend ourselves more than we do. How can we help? What can we do?
And I think if we do that, or I think from my experience, it's key.
I agree 100%.